The 13 Families Conspiracy is one of the most pervasive and enduring conspiracy theories in the modern world. It claims that a small group of elite families, allegedly including the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, DuPonts, and others, control virtually every aspect of global affairs, from banking and politics to media, medicine, and war. Proponents argue that these dynasties work in concert through secretive organizations like the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission to establish a new world order, a centralized global government in which their dominance is unchallenged. At the heart of this belief lies the conviction that behind the curtain of democracy and capitalism is an oligarchic power structure, handed down through generations, manipulating world events for profit, control, and the consolidation of power. The theory begins with an analysis of historical wealth and influence, particularly focusing on families that rose to prominence during the 18th and 19th centuries through banking, industry, and political maneuvering. The Rothschild family is perhaps the most frequently mentioned. Originating in Frankfurt, Germany, the Rothschilds established banking houses in major European capitals during the Napoleonic era, eventually becoming one of the wealthiest families in the world. Their financial reach, especially in times of war where they funded both sides, has fueled suspicion that they were not merely financiers but architects of conflict. The Rockefellers in the United States amassed their fortune through Standard Oil, becoming synonymous with American industrial capitalism. Their name is often associated with the founding of major global institutions and philanthropic endeavors, which conspiracy theorists interpret not as altruism, but as a strategic investment in global influence. The theory also draws heavily on the idea of bloodlines, tracing supposed intermarriages among elite families to preserve wealth and power. It asserts that these 13 families interconnect through marriage, partnerships, and shared agendas, forming an unbroken lineage of control. The notion is not new. It borrows heavily from older ideas like aristocratic rule, divine kingship, and oligarchic tradition, where the world is not governed by nations, but by families who have transcended national identity. In the conspiracy narrative, presidents, prime ministers, and elected leaders are merely figureheads, puppets whose strings are pulled by this ruling cabal. Elections, media, and wars are said to be orchestrated not for ideology or principle, but for the benefit of these entrenched elites. One of the major pillars supporting this theory is the banking system, particularly central banks. The U.S. Federal Reserve, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, and the World Bank are believed by conspiracy theorists to be tools of the family's control. These institutions, often shrouded in complex economic language and perceived as unaccountable to the public, are said to manipulate economies, initiate recessions, and inflate or collapse currencies to redistribute wealth upward. Critics point to the 2008 financial crash as an example of how global financial systems can be manipulated by a few powerful interests, often emerging richer after crises that devastate millions. In this view, wealth is not just accumulated, but weaponized to consolidate power. Beyond economics, the theory extends into secret societies and global governance. The Bilderberg Group, which holds annual meetings between political leaders, business magnates, and academics, is often cited as a shadowy roundtable where the world's fate is allegedly decided. Similarly, the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, and the Trilateral Commission are portrayed not as think tanks or policy forums, but as the operational arms of these elite families. These groups are accused of promoting globalism, the erosion of national sovereignty in favor of a centralized, technocratic global state. According to the theory, this New World Order will be administered by unelected elites under the guise of international cooperation, environmental protection, and economic development. Global crises, whether pandemics or climate change, are often viewed within this lens not as natural occurrences or scientific realities, but as manufactured opportunities to expand control. The conspiracy also dips into cultural manipulation. The media, film industry, and educational systems are said to be tools of indoctrination, subtly shaping public opinion to accept elite rule and reject dissent. According to this view, narratives are controlled, history is rewritten, and independent thought is discouraged. The entertainment industry, particularly in Hollywood, is sometimes described as a propaganda machine, producing content that normalizes surveillance, glamorizes wealth, and trivializes rebellion. The rise of digital platforms and social media, while democratizing in some ways, is also seen as a new frontier for information control, especially with increasing censorship, algorithmic filtering, and data surveillance. At a deeper level, the 13 Families theory is not just about money or influence, it is about worldview. It posits a battle between a hidden power elite and the general population, casting global history as a deliberate manipulation of humanity by a few. The theory resonates with people because it offers a comprehensive, albeit paranoid, explanation for the world's complexities and injustices. Why do wars continue? Why does poverty persist amid so much wealth? Why do political promises so often fail? Rather than accepting these outcomes as the result of flawed systems, random chance, or human nature, the conspiracy simplifies the narrative. These are all deliberate outcomes, engineered by a ruling elite. Critics of the theory, however, warn that it dangerously oversimplifies history and economics and can lead to scapegoating and anti-Semitism, especially given the prominent mention of Jewish families like the Rothschilds. Many scholars have pointed out that while elites do exist and power is indeed often concentrated, the idea of a cohesive, omnipotent cabal orchestrating every world event is unsupported by evidence. Moreover, power struggles among elites, conflicting national interests, and the unpredictability of human behavior make the notion of total control implausible. The conspiracy also ignores the reality that the most powerful actors in the modern world, such as multinational corporations and tech giants, often operate independently of old money families, and their influence is shaped more by market forces than hereditary ties. Another key criticism lies in the theory's adaptability. Almost any major event can be retrofitted into the narrative, be it the COVID-19 pandemic, economic crashes, or geopolitical conflicts. This makes the theory unfalsifiable. The absence of evidence becomes evidence of the conspiracy's effectiveness in hiding itself. Such thinking creates a self-reinforcing loop where skepticism toward authority transforms into wholesale rejection of all mainstream information. This can be dangerous, leading to disempowerment, radicalization, or even violence, as seen in various anti-government or anti-globalist movements across the globe. It also diverts attention from legitimate critiques of power, like income inequality, lobbying, corruption, or structural racism, by attributing them all to an invisible enemy beyond accountability. Still, it would be inaccurate to dismiss the theory entirely without understanding its emotional and psychological appeal. In a world marked by growing inequality, political instability, and eroding public trust, the idea of a hidden elite pulling the strings offers a form of narrative clarity. It speaks to real anxieties, that democracy is failing, that corporations are unaccountable, and that ordinary people have little control over their futures. The 13 Families conspiracy becomes not just a theory, but a metaphor, a mythic representation of modern powerlessness. In that sense, it is less a political doctrine and more a cultural expression of mistrust, confusion, and the yearning for truth in a post-truth world. The role of the internet in spreading and amplifying the theory cannot be overstated. Once relegated to fringe literature, the conspiracy has found a global audience through YouTube channels, Reddit threads, TikTok videos, and alternative media sites. Memes and bite-sized videos have made the theory accessible and viral, often disconnected from its historical context. This virality has helped the idea mutate, taking on new dimensions that reflect contemporary concerns. In some versions, the families are portrayed as occultists or reptilian aliens. In others, they are simply billionaires with secret agendas. The core remains the same, that a hidden force controls the world. In recent years, the resurgence of populism has breathed new life into such theories. From QAnon in the United States to anti-globalist movements in Europe, there is a growing suspicion of elites, international institutions, and mainstream narratives. Political leaders have sometimes exploited this sentiment, framing themselves as outsiders fighting against shadowy networks. This can create a feedback loop where conspiracy theories fuel populist rhetoric, which in turn legitimizes and spreads the theories further. The danger lies in how such narratives can erode democratic institutions, polarize societies, and justify authoritarian responses. In conclusion, the 13 Families conspiracy represents a fascinating intersection of myth, politics, history, and psychology. Whether seen as a dangerous delusion or a symbolic critique of real-world power structures, it reveals deep fissures in public trust and societal cohesion. It capitalizes on legitimate concerns about inequality, elitism, and the opacity of global institutions, but wraps them in a narrative that often veers into paranoia, anti-intellectualism, and prejudice. As long as these underlying concerns remain unaddressed, the theory will likely persist, evolving with the times, shaping and being shaped by the fears of each new generation. Whether real or imagined, the specter of the 13 Families continues to haunt the global imagination, reminding us of the human desire to find meaning, villains, and order in a world that often feels chaotic and unjust.